welcome to the No Spin News. I'm Monica Crowley, in today for Bill O'Reilly. Big thanks to Bill for inviting me to come and join you today, and thanks to all of you for joining us. We've got a great show ahead. And by the way, please check out my podcast, the Monica Crowley Podcast, available on all podcast platforms, so please go check it out. You will love it, I promise you. We've got a lot to get to today, including the latest on the southern border and Title 42. But first, the Monica Memo. And I want to discuss a singular menace in American politics. In fact, this woman has been a menace in American politics now for 40 years. Of course, I'm talking about Hillary Rodham Clinton. You know, for those of you who have been following my career, I've been talking about Mrs. Clinton now for decades. And with every passing year, I hope and pray that this will be the last year that I need to talk about Mrs. Clinton. But unfortunately, she is still around. And every once in a while, she pops up, as she did recently in the news. So I want to get to a broader picture here about why we are still talking about this woman. Mrs. Clinton is eaten alive by two main things. Number one, that she has never been president and never will be president. And number two, that she lost to not one, but two men who had a better handle on the political landscape and where the American people were. Barack Obama in the first go-around and Donald Trump. But it was really losing to Donald Trump that put her over the edge and made her completely lose her mind over the possibility of losing to this orange man who was a New York City billionaire, blue-collar billionaire, and according to her and her crowd was just crass and vulgar, and of course had no experience in politics whatsoever. This absolutely drove Mrs. Clinton insane because she had spent her entire adult life preparing to be president of the United States. In fact, she had given up her entire adult life, including her sense of dignity, by hitching her wagon to her husband, Bill, in service of her big ambition of being president of the United States. So when she lost her mind. How on earth could she lose to someone who had never done any of this before? This vulgarian, how was that even possible? Didn't Donald Trump know that it was her turn? Didn't he know to make way for Mrs. Clinton after everything she has been through? Well, either Donald Trump didn't know or he didn't care. And actually, Donald Trump makes way for no one, particularly when it comes to the future of America. So Donald Trump made the mistake of running in 2016 and winning not just the Republican nomination, but the presidency. This, of course, could not stand. It could not stand for Hillary personally, for all the reasons I just laid out, that she's eaten alive by her life's ambition being taken away from her by this vulgarian from New York. But also she had another motive. Remember the email scandal, the personal server scandal? She needed to distract from that. But there was also something bigger going on. The deep state in this country, which is very real and very vicious, also could not allow this to stand. So they set out to frame and destroy Donald Trump, who of course was an interloper. This interloper who was coming in, disrupting the swamp, disrupting the entire corrupt gravy train, and of course disrupting their great reboot of America, trying to move America toward a more Marxist model. So this interloper needed to be undermined and then destroyed. But how? And that was the question. How were they going to do it? Well, they couldn't do it through a standard issue dirty trick that was too mild, and they couldn't even do it through a more intense smear like a sex scandal. No, they tried all of that and nothing worked. Nothing stuck to Donald Trump. They were going to have to bring in the deep state big guns in order to get this job done. And so they did. So they enlisted deep state operatives, their colleagues in the Obama White House, the CIA, the DOJ, and the FBI, in order to come up with a smear big enough to destroy not just his candidacy, that failed, but also to try to destroy his presidency. And they did have some success with that. So they hatched and executed the smear that Donald Trump was a Russian agent, a Putin stooge, right? An American traitor. Of course, this is all projection because they and their ilk are guilty of all manner of cashing in and selling America out to enrich themselves with America's enemies. Everything they accuse us of doing, they themselves are guilty of. But they knew that once they had the press, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Rachel Maddow every night, they knew that once they had the press ready, willing, and able to perpetuate this lie, that they were on the road to really destroying Donald Trump. And that is exactly what happened. All of these reporters that picked up the lie and smeared it, a lot of them got Pulitzer Prizes and moved on, got promoted. Nobody's held accountable for any of this. They knew that it was all going to fall into place, and it did. So until now, and you've got special counsel John Durham, who has brought the first trial, the first criminal indictment, actually the second one. The first one was this guy, Kleinsmith, but this one is the Clinton campaign lawyer, Michael Sussman. And what happened on Friday last week was staggering because Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, Robbie Mook, blurted out in open court that Mrs. Clinton, in fact, had approved the spread of the lie to reporters. Well, of course she did. Mrs. Clinton was the lie. Mrs. Clinton created the lie. Mrs. Clinton was behind the entire thing. Now, they also shopped it to the CIA, which dismissed it out of hand. They brought it to the FBI, and the agent there looking at this said it was bogus within the space of 1 hour. So how did it continue to get life? Peter Strzok at the FBI revived it, spread it, the press picked it up, and like I said, ran with it to this very day. No one has apologized. There's been no accountability whatsoever. If this isn't treason, I don't know what is. And as far as the Mueller investigation goes, I see a lot of people on social media over the weekend saying $42 million in 2 years to investigate this. How did Mueller not find it? It's because the investigation was the cover-up. They knew that when Donald Trump was sworn in, that they lost control of the government and they lost control of the evidence. So they needed to buy time. And they enlisted James Comey, and Donald Trump's first attorney general, Jeff Sessions, was stupid enough to go along with appointing a special counsel and Robert Mueller. And the rest, as they say, is history, but it's all a lie. The press, of course, is not covering this. They will not because they are corrupt. But we now have this trial underway. Don't have very high expectations of this because, as we know, the judge is an Obama appointee, and there are at least 3 members of the jury who are Hillary Clinton donors. But there is a silver lining to this. Secrets never stay secret forever. And what is happening now with this trial is that Durham is establishing a very public record of the crimes that were committed. So even if we never see convictions, and even if we don't see Mrs. Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, the others who knew about this, knew it was false, abused their power, spread this to destroy a sitting president of the United States, even if we never see any legal accountability, know this, that all of the facts will be aired out and they will be part of the public record forever. Okay, that's the Monica memo. Let's turn our attention now to Title 42 and the southern border because we have an imminent situation on our hands here, which I don't think that the federal judge in Louisiana who ruled late last week to not permit the Biden administration to lift Title 42, which is a Trump-era public health safeguard, to allow the immediate deportation of illegal aliens who've come into the country across the border, allow them to be deported back. I don't think that's going to change the dynamic here, and we are going to have a very important guest to address this question. But given the fact that a federal judge has stopped this, in view of that, let's take a look at the latest poll numbers here. There's a brand new Politico Harvard poll that was just released that shows the majority of Americans oppose the lifting of Title 42. That is 55% overall oppose lifting Title 42. They do not think that it should be lifted. They appreciate the judge's decision here. They do believe we're still in a public health emergency, or at least a public health situation here with COVID where this should still remain in place. Listen to this. These are the latest border statistics according to the Customs and Border Patrol. Last month, the month of April, there were total encounters of nearly 235,000 individuals at the border. That's a 5% increase just from March. And then the total number of encounters at the southern border, starting from October of last year, so this is the fiscal year so far, nearly 1.3 million encounters. That doesn't even include the gotaways, the people that they can't monitor. These are just people that have actually encountered border agents down at the border. By comparison, you ready for this? The last fiscal year of President Trump's presidency, fiscal year 2020, there were a mere 459,000 encounters at the southern border. Now, one is too many, but we understand we're a big magnet here in the United States, but he had less than 500,000 in the entire year. And so far, from October of last year, nearly 1.3 million encounters. So you can see the spike. You know the incentives that the Biden administration has offered illegal immigrants from around the world. We also got new ICE data showing that the number of deportations under Biden has dropped by a staggering 78%. 78% fewer illegal immigrants being deported under Biden than in the last year of President Trump's term in office. So this is an historic catastrophe. And just because a judge put a hold on Title 42, this doesn't mean that the situation is going to change much, particularly now that we're heading into the summer months.
If you own a home or property, here are 2 reasons you never want to become the victim of home title fraud. Reason 1, when a cyber criminal worms his way onto your home's title, he'll take out loan after loan using your home's equity. Then he'll vanish, leaving you to prove you didn't commit the fraud. Reason 2, you could be a victim of home title fraud and not know it for months. No agency notifies you or asks if you sold your home or added someone to the title. You'll find out when the collection calls start coming for loans you never took out. Nobody knows about how to help stop this crime more than Home Title Lock, America's trusted leader. I urge you to go to HometitleLock.com, read the testimonials from retired FBI agents and others, then register your home address to see if you are already a victim. And when you protect your home, tell them Bill sent you for 30 free days of protection. So please go to HometitleLock.com, HometitleLock.com.
So I want to bring in a very special guest, Laura Reese. Laura is the director of the Heritage Foundation's Border Security and Immigration Center. She's also a senior research fellow for Homeland Security. And Laura, I thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. So, as I mentioned, we had this federal judge in Louisiana who blocked the Biden administration's attempt to lift Title 42. But we still have thousands of people who have massed on the southern border waiting to come in anticipation of Title 42 being lifted as of today. So your thoughts on the judge's action here, and do you think that this is going to change any of the dynamics down there?
I don't think it's going to change the trajectory. Kudos to the states. There were 24 states that sued the Biden administration in this case to keep Title 42 in place. And kudos to the judge for ruling in favor of the states. Sadly, however, we've already seen the Biden administration start to dial down use of Title 42, particularly last month. And in response to the judge's order, the Department of Homeland Security put out a short statement saying they would comply. But I suspect they will comply with this order the same way as they are complying with the Texas federal judge who ordered the Biden administration to keep Remain in Mexico in place. And that means that the administration will, just as they put a few numbers of people in the Remain in Mexico program, I anticipate they will use Title 42 with a small number of migrants to say, yes, court, we are in compliance, when in fact they will rarely use it. Instead, they will process them into the U.S., release them on parole, and encourage them to apply for asylum.
You know, Laura, you raised a really good point here about the Remain in Mexico policy, because another federal judge had ordered the administration to continue to enforce that, and the administration simply blew it off, and they didn't. So what makes anybody think that they would listen to this judge as well? Do you think that the administration will appeal this judge's decision and take it to a higher court?
Yes, I do. I think the Justice Department is planning to appeal it. And so then the Biden administration can play both sides of this. They can tell their radical left supporters, look, we're trying to end this. We agree with you. We want it to go away. And look, we're appealing this judge's decision. At the same time, if the numbers get too high, as they're anticipated by our border agents, who are estimating the numbers will get up to about 18,000 in a day, then the main goal of this administration is to keep the spotlight off of what they are doing. So if the numbers get too large and the media starts to pay attention, the administration can dial up the use of Title 42 to quickly expel some migrants and then get that pressure off of them. Meanwhile, as they continue to process more illegal aliens into the country as fast as possible.
You know, you mentioned some of these numbers and they're just staggering. They are anticipating about 18,000 a day coming in. That's up from about 7,000, Laura. And one of the items that is always in the forefront of my mind but gets no coverage is the fact that we could be letting in potential terrorists. And DHS and some of these other agencies are talking about several dozen that they know about who appear on the terrorist watch list. So there are terrorists who might be streaming into this country unchecked, right?
We have to assume it. The administration has admitted to 42 terrorists on the watch list that they have encountered. Secretary Mayorkas wouldn't or couldn't say their whereabouts during a hearing a couple weeks ago. But when we have hundreds of thousands of gotaways, we have to assume there are several more known as suspected terrorists among those numbers. And this is a very dangerous national security threat.
Yeah, and speaking of, we're also talking about catastrophic human and drug trafficking as well that only benefits the drug cartels. I saw Senator Roger Marshall, who's also a medical doctor. He's recently been down to the border and he called this a humanitarian catastrophe and he called it a war zone. And what we do know now is that the drug cartels are actually making upwards of $200 million per week in moving these people across the border into the United States. Could you speak to that?
Yes, we now have had 2 years of historic numbers of Americans dying from overdoses. Last year it was over 100,000, and the newest statistic is over 107,000. And among that, fentanyl is the highest among 18 to 35-year-olds. So this poison is killing our young Americans. And I have yet to see the Biden administration acknowledge this, let alone change course on this. And so we have to ask, how many Americans have to die before they start paying attention to this?
It's really, it's so staggering, and it's all completely avoidable. President Trump had the border fixed. He essentially had illegal immigration, maybe if not totally solved, completely under control. All Biden had to do was nothing, and he threw everything into reverse. So, Laura, let me ask you, the Border Patrol and ICE, they are completely overwhelmed. They all say publicly that they no longer have operational control over the border and haven't for a while. They're not getting the resources that they need. So, Laura, I can imagine that morale in these agencies is just at rock bottom.
It is. They now call themselves travel agents, or worse, that they are a chain in the smuggling link. Sadly, we just lost a Border Patrol agent this past weekend to suicide. Don't know the circumstances behind it, but the conditions that they face in going to work and not being able to do their job, given the oath that they took, is very demoralizing. And we are losing too many agents to early retirement, resignations, et cetera. And it just makes the border less secure. The Secretary of Homeland Security gives lip service to supporting these agents, and yet he's doing the exact opposite in abandoning them.
Well, Laura, I just want to end on this one point that a lot of people talk about the Biden administration's incompetence. I wish it were only incompetence. What you're seeing now, because there's been no course correction, that's evidence that this is a deliberate overwhelming of the system. It's a deliberate overwhelming of the border. They will not stop this until they're out of office. And the question is, how are we going to manage this problem once we take control of the Congress, hopefully after November this year, and then in 24, because the country simply cannot sustain this. But Laura, I want to thank you so much. Laura Reese of the Heritage Foundation, thank you for doing this today and for your great leadership on this issue. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
You bet.
AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens, is the leading conservative advocacy and benefits organization in America. I am an AMAC member, and you should be too. AMAC gives you access to exclusive benefits, insightful takes on today's news, and a magazine full of uncensored content that you will not find anywhere else. Most importantly, AMAC is working tirelessly to preserve the freedoms enshrined and secured by our Constitution. AMAC has become one of the most impactful organizations in America because more than just talk, AMAC gets things done. They are pushing back against the efforts to defund our police, weaken the borders, and replace your freedom with government control. But they need your help. Stand with me and more than 2 million patriots and join AMAC today at amac.us. That's AMAC.us. amac.us, and tell them O'Reilly sent you. Okay, here is the message of the day. So, one of the reasons I wrote Killing the Killers was because I was stunned to learn about our weapons systems, what we have in our arsenal, what America has. Let me give you just one example. China has 300 nuke warheads to put on missiles. 300. You know how much the USA has? How many? 4,000. We have technological weapons in space right this second that hunt down and assassinate enemies of America. You will never hear about it. How could you? The people are vapor. The attack comes from space. Bang. In Killing the Killers, I take you step by step how that happens. A lot of classified information. If I go to prison, I go to prison. We got it. I put it in a book. It is amazing how powerful this nation is. And Americans don't really know it. They don't really understand it. If we wanted to vaporize Putin, we could do it in an hour. Boom. But we risk World War III. If we assassinated him, blew up the Kremlin. Then Russians could get their subs, whack. Russians have a lot of nukes. Okay? But it would take us an hour to get Putin if we wanted to. But you don't risk nuclear war by doing that. Can't. No responsible person could. Right? But Americans do not know the power that our president, the commander-in-chief, holds. I mean, I talked to Trump about this so much privately. I mean, that he was awed because he didn't know. He had no idea when he got elected president what the power was that he held. Nobody knows. So when you read Killing the Killers, this is a whole different ballgame now. This is telling you exactly where the United States stands in the world vis-a-vis China, Russia, the jihad, all of that. And it's vital that you know it so you can put things into perspective when bad things like Ukraine happen. Because all of our lives are at stake here. But the weaponry, nobody on this planet has ever even conceived of the stuff that we have. And that's true. It's not science fiction. Killing the killers. Thank you for watching and listening to the No Spin News. We'll see you tomorrow. Supply chain issues have been a catalyst in bringing high-tech manufacturing back to the USA. My tech expert and founder of Brownstone Research calls it the Great Recalibration, and he discusses it in his newsletter, Near Future Report. For the past 35 years, he has helped his subscribers safely navigate volatile times, and he also answers your most pressing questions, like how to protect your money from inflation. What are the implications of a new digital currency and the Great Reset? What will the Fed do with interest rates? And what is expected from the stock market in 2022? Brownstone Research has been at the forefront of nearly every major market move for the past 35 years. Let Jeff Brown help you by signing up for his newsletter today at a 75% discount. It's a 12-month subscription for only $49. Please go to jeffbrowntech.com. jeffbrowntech.com. jeffbrowntech.com.
Bill O'Reilly is back on TV and only on The First. No Spin News, every weeknight at 8 p.m. Eastern, only on The First.